Minister, I would like to ask regarding the national petition, what kind of help or support can the collected signatures provide in relation to the 800 billion plan? And could a change occur, such as the one in December at the summit, where it was possible to prevent the use of Russian assets and avoid warmongering in Europe? Thank you.
We see that Europe intends to burden its own coming years, even decades, practically tying up all its financial leeway towards Ukraine, without asking the people anywhere about it. In our view, this is an undemocratic approach. It's acceptable that it is an undemocratic approach. Of course, about this, a decision must also be made at the election. But since the two European Union summit meetings will take place in the next 2 months, with the second one occurring about a month before the election, where this is the most important issue they will be discussing. Therefore, it is very important for Hungary to set an example in democracy again and again. Just as we were the only ones to ask the people about the issue of migration here, just as in a way that does not affect the government's responsibility in its decision-making. But we also try to involve people between the two elections. The weight of this issue justifies this in itself. The Hungarian Prime Minister needs a clear, democratic expression and support for the Hungarian position to be strong in Europe. Moreover, this has an exemplary significance as well. In our view, decisions on issues of such gravity shouldn't be made in Europe without governments asking the people. This is their problem, not ours, but we are okay. We want to lead by example.
What do you think about Ukraine wanting to interfere in the Hungarian elections?
Press reports have appeared regarding this, and various ranking members of the Ukrainian government have made public statements that they are interested in a change of government in Hungary, which appeared as news items. I think the Ukrainian state has a clear duty to refute this. That is, for a country to wish to intervene in another country's election by violating the exercise of the right to vote. This is such a violation of sovereignty that Ukraine, which is fighting for its own sovereignty, can least afford, because it discredits its position in other areas as well. So, we expect the Ukrainian state to clarify this. We expect them to respect the sovereignty of the Hungarian state, including the freedom of choice of Hungarian voters.
Peter Szijjártó is negotiating regarding the Serbian oil company, which is due to the Russian sanctions, requiring a new owner. What mandate does Peter Szijjártó have from the government to negotiate? And if an agreement favorable to Hungary or Hungarian companies is reached, does it require support from the Americans? And if so, where is Hungary's sovereignty?
Primarily, the one negotiating is the one who wants to buy. This, of course, is not the Hungarian state, but naturally MOL. And if MOL can reach an agreement, then for the entire transaction, for the transaction to make sense, it is necessary for the American party to guarantee that the company MOL is purchasing and will be exempt from sanctions in the event of the sale. This second part requires Hungarian diplomacy. If it is raised as a matter of sovereignty, then it primarily affects Serbian sovereignty, not Hungarian. Since for MOL, this is a business transaction, which only makes sense if these sanctions are lifted. Naturally, it can rightfully be questioned, and it clearly shows the existing American dominance in the world, that from the moment America sanctions a company, from that point, the company is practically inoperative and becomes worthless in the Western world and beyond, in most parts of the world. And a government office, which is under the U.S. Treasury, decides on this. This is the sad situation, but at the moment it more specifically violates not Hungarian sovereignty, but the interest of the Serbs for this company to remain operational, which requires a new owner.
Minister, I would like to go back to the beginning regarding the announcements about Ukraine. How do you see who Hungary can rely on in this struggle at the next EU summits? And isn't there a concern that with this whole Ukrainian financing, the European Commission might try to transform it into a decision by qualified majority? What are the risks and possibilities of this?
Those we can rely on are the Visegrad countries. Likely, there will still only be 3 of us. And we'll see how much ground common sense gains, because in recent times, the French and the Italians, among the big countries, have also started to approach things very cautiously, but they are starting to consider that after all, there must be a limit to Europe's financial capacity and the European voters' tolerance, and Ukraine is slowly exceeding that, as we don't see where all this will end. What we are seeing now is already a large amount exceeding 1 trillion euros that they are requesting has been received, and the European Union has already promised them. So the danger is real. Now the European Union has such an amount of this magnitude, or a loan must be taken out, or what the member states pay back afterwards, or member state contributions must be made mandatory, or the EU budget must be approved in such a way, which means that practically the EU budget 80% goes to Ukraine. And since 20 is already promised to Ukraine, that makes it 100%, and the EU budget ceases to exist. We might as well transfer it all to Ukraine. It would likely be difficult to achieve unanimity for this, as long as Hungary has a civic national government. It is absolutely impossible. Member state consent is essential for borrowing. Member state contributions cannot, in our opinion, be ordered by a simple majority, adding that these are not straightforward matters, because the European Union in recent months has demonstrated that in cases where it was completely clear earlier, it can only be decided by sentiment, and the committee itself presented the proposal in this way. Then it changes its position and says that it can also be accepted by a qualified majority or some form of majority. So, when Ukraine says that 800 billion euros are needed just for its operation in the next decade, so this does not include any military spending. The 90 billion euros that the President of the European Commission reported about yesterday, a significant part of that is allocated for military purposes. But a part of it is also for the operation of the Ukrainian state. And in these matters, the Commission has either already decided, or, for the most part, wants to decide, and expects commitments in February or March. And that is why it is crucial to have a clear Hungarian declaration of intent about where the limit is that Hungary is willing to go. I believe this was the monetary assistance which we have done, and where we are no longer willing to, we are not willing, because having us pay the bill for the Ukraine-Russia war, or even pay for the functioning of the Ukrainian state, we are not willing to do so, and we must clearly say no to this, and this is what the national petition authorizes the Hungarian Prime Minister to do.
Minister, how realistic do you think negotiations between the EU and Russia are right now?
Head of the Hungarian Prime Minister's office, Hungarian. It's particularly interesting it would be if the Finnish president were involved in this case. I would add that, despite this, if there were such an initiative, we would welcome it. More than a year and a half ago, when Hungary held the presidency of the European Union, the Hungarian Prime Minister took office. He traveled to Ukraine to meet with President Zelensky and President Putin. Then, afterwards, he held talks with the Chinese president and President Trump, who was still a candidate at the time, as well as with Turkish President Erdogan, and afterwards he wrote a report and a briefing for the heads of state and government of the European Union, as well as the President of the Commission. If the Commission had heeded it, and if the European political leaders had heeded it, today, the representatives of the European Union would not be sitting in waiting rooms when substantive discussions on the Russian-Ukrainian crisis are taking place, for it was also stated that if the European Union wants to be a player in this matter, it cannot avoid having to deal with both types of maintaining communication channels.